Hi everyone. Yeah, so this is joint work with Anurag from UC Berkeley and Shalib from um, University of Waterloo. So yeah, it's on query to communication lifting theorems. So since both previous talks of this session have been about query complexity, I'll just maybe quickly go over the definitions again without introducing the model. So we have these things. The deterministic query complexity of a function is the minimum number of queries needed for a deterministic query algorithm to compute it. The randomized query complexity is the minimum number of queries needed for a randomized query algorithm to compute it with some bounded errors, so say one third for worst case inputs. And the quantum query complexity is the minimum number of quantum queries needed, again with bounded error. And as an example, the deterministic and randomized query complexity of the OR function are both n, and the uh, quantum query complexity of the OR function is 12n because of lower search. And I apologize to the previous presenters of this session who spent a lot of effort proving very lower bounds, but very lower bounds are easy to prove, at least compared to um, other models of computation. The other model of computation we'll be considering here is communication complexity. So in the communication model, you have this known two-party function, or in the most general case, a two-party relation. So it takes two inputs, x and y, and you have two parties, Alice and Bob, who are separated, and you give input x to Alice and input y to Bob. And Alice and Bob want to jointly compute f of xy, and they can do this by communicating. So Alice starts the communication by sending some message to Bob, which depends on her inputs. This can be some arbitrary function of her input. Bob sends back a message which depends on his input, and also potentially the message Alice sent. And they do this back and forth until one of the parties, say Bob, is ready to output the value of the function. What I described here is a deterministic communication protocol, but you can also have a randomized protocol where Alice and Bob share public randomness or also use private randomness, and their messages can then depend on the random bits that they use as well. You can also generalize this to a quantum communication model. Here, Alice and Bob are allowed to share initial entanglement, and on receiving her input x, Alice applies a unitary to her half of the entangled state that depends on her input and sends some part of it as the message to Bob and keeps some as memory potentially. Bob applies a unitary that depends on his input to the message he received from Alice as well as his part of the entangled state and sends back a message and so on until Bob say gives the output again. Okay, so now the measure of complexity that we are interested in the communication model is how many bits or qubits of communication are needed between Alice and Bob to compute f for the worst case inputs. So the again, like in the query case, the deterministic communication complexity of f is the minimum minimum communication needed by a deterministic communication protocol to compute f. The randomized communication complexity is the minimum communication needed by a randomized communication algorithm, which makes error at most one third on all inputs. And the error probability here is calculated only with respect to the randomness used and not with the distribution over the inputs. And the uh, quantum communication complexity is the minimum quantum communication needed to compute f. Communication, as I've mentioned, is a more powerful model than querying. So, for example, if you consider the OR function from before, suppose you divide up its input in two parts, call one x and call one y, and you give x to Alice and y to Bob. The communication complexity of this function is going to be um, one bit for all models because Alice can just compute the OR of her inputs and send it to Bob, and then Bob can compute the OR of this with the OR of his wife, and that will be the correct answer. Now, because communication is a more powerful model than query, communication lower bounds are also much harder to prove. Now, we saw that communication has all this extra power, but sometimes this extra power is not useful. So it's not necessarily always more powerful than query. As an example, we can consider the disjoiners function, which is a composition of the n-bit OR function with the 2-bit AND function. What I mean by this is that you have n 2-bit AND functions. Each takes input some xi, yi, where xi is Alice's input and yi is Bob's input, and they're all bits. And the output of each AND function is fed to the big OR function. So the deterministic and randomized query complexities of deterministic and randomized communication complexities of this disjoint function are both n, and the quantum communication complexity is square root n, again because of distributed version of this of Grover search. So we see that disjointness or composed with and for communication is as hard as or is for query. Okay, so now maybe we want to ask the general question. If you have some general F composed with some general G, which we'll call a gadget, can F composed with G be as hard for communication as F is for query? Now, from the example we just saw, if F is OR and G is AND, then this is clearly true because that's the disjointness function. But if F is AND and G is AND as well, then we just have a big AND function, and just like a big OR function is easy, a big AND function is also easy. So this is not true. If F is AND and G is OR, on the other hand, it's again true because it in a similar way as the disjointness function basically. But if F is OR and G is OR, it's a big OR function and it's not true again. So that means that if you want F composed G to be as hard for communication as F is for query for a general F, G needs to contain both the 2-bit AND function and the 2-bit OR function. An example of such a G is a gadget word that we'll be using. So it takes inputs from 0, 1, 2, 3 plus 0, 1, 2, 3 and gives binary outputs. And you might be able to see that the so the truth table of word looks like this. And you might be able to see that the top left corner of the truth table contains the AND function, and the top bottom left contains the AND function. Sorry, bottom left contains the OR function. Another example of a gadget that contains both AND and OR is the inner product function for some inner product function on m bits for some large enough m. The inner product function in particular contains this word gadget, so it contains both AND and OR. Okay, now what is the lifting theorem? A lifting theorem says that if you compose F with some appropriate gadget G, then some communication complexity quantity that you're interested in for F composed with G is lower bounded by some query complexity quantity of F. This is good for us because, as I said before, query lower bounds are easy to prove. So if you can lower bound the query complexity measure of F and you have a lifting theorem, you directly have a lower bound for the communication complexity measure for F composed with G. A number of lifting theorems have been recently done via this technique called simulation, which requires large gadgets. So the first such lifting theorem, which lifted deterministic query complexity to deterministic communication complexity, was given by Raz and McKenzie in 1999. So they used a gadget which was quite large. This is called the index gadget, and the size of the gadget that they used was polynomial in the number of bits of the outer function F. And this proof was simplified subsequently by Darcy and Watson. Okay, and the gadget size for this deterministic query to deterministic communication lifting was subsequently reduced to logarithmic sized. So in particular, the log sized inner product function. So this was done by Wu, Yao, and Yuan. For randomized communication complexity, again, first it was lifted with to randomized communication. Randomized query complexity was again lifted to randomized communication complexity with a poly-sized gadget, first by Darcy Watson, and then the gadget size was subsequently reduced to logarithmic by Chattopadhyay, Filmas et al. So we generally want gadget sizes to be smaller because that leads to more lower bounds. But very few lifting theorems with constant size gadgets are known. One of the first was given by Shostov, who lifted this query complexity measure called approximate degree to a communication complexity measure called approximate log rank. So approximate degree is a lower bound on quantum communication complexity, and accordingly, approximate log rank is lower bound on quantum communication complexity. Okay, another constant size gadget lifting theorem was given by Guse and Pitassi. This used the same Burr function that I described earlier. So they lifted a measure called critical block sensitivity, which is a lower bound on randomized communication complexity, and they lifted this to the randomized, critical block sensitivity is a lower bound on randomized query complexity, and they lifted it to randomized communication complexity. Okay, so what are the lifting theorems we prove? We prove a lifting theorem for randomized communication complexity of F composed with the same Burr gadget. And what we lift to it is this measure called the classical adversary bound. This is a stronger lower bound on the randomized communication complexity. For quantum, we have a round dependent result. So we have a lifting theorem for the we lower bound the quantum communication complexity of R round protocols for F composed with Burr, and we lower bound this by this same measure CAD of F by R square. This also implies a round independent lifting theorem, and I'll talk about that later. Another round independent result we have is that we lift this measure called add1 of F, which is a weakening of the positive weights adversary bound for F, but still a lower bound on the quantum query complexity of F. And we lift this to the a general quantum communication complexity, but one caveat of this result is that it has this factor of a measure that we call QIC-Z of the gadget. QIC-Z is a measure that we sort of informally relate to secure two-party computation in an honest but curious model, but we haven't been able to prove any unconditional lower bounds on it. And in particular, we haven't been able to show that there exists even one gadget such that its QIC-Z is non-zero. Okay. Now to compare our results with previous results, we show that the measure CAD that we lift is strictly greater than the previous best result known by Guse and Pitassi, which was CF, and this is true for all partial functions. And in fact, there exists a family of total functions for which power 3/2 separations between these two is known. The other measure, add1 that we lift, it's in fact upper bounded by approximate degree for all partial functions. This was proved by Aronson and David et al. But this is only true for partial functions. The result is not known to be true for relations, I think, and our lifting theorem also holds for relations, so it might give something new for relations. And another thing is that we think our techniques might generalize to stronger lifting theorems, in particular, say for the full positive weights adversary bound. Okay, so let me define what the adversary bounds are. What we'll be looking at is the dual formulation of the adversary bound. So it is defined as optimal, as an optimization program like this. So you have a minimization over a weight scheme for each input z to your function and each index I. You define a weight qzi, and this qzi's have to be non-negative, and they have to satisfy this constraint that if you have two inputs, z and w, which on which f doesn't agree, then z and w differ on some indices I, and if you sum over the minimum of qzi and qwi on those indices, the sum should be at least 1 for all such zw pairs. Sorry. Yeah, and so the weight scheme needs to satisfy this constraint, and with that, it's defined the CAD value is equal to the summation over I of qzi of and the maximum over z of these values, and the minimum over the weight schemes, obviously. Uh, the positive weights adversary bound is a small modification of this, where the constraint it's defined similarly, except the constraint that we have on QCI, instead of min of QCI and QWI for each CW pair, we required that the summation over I such that Ci and Wi differ of the geometric mean of QCI and QWI is lower bounded by 1. Uh, and again, a small modification of this, where instead of lower bounded by 1, if you just say that it's exactly equal to 1, that gives you the negative weights adversary bound, and that is in fact a tight lower bound on quantum vary complexity. So since the constraint on the adversary bound is weaker than the classical adversary bound, it's a smaller quantity, and the adversary bound lower bounds quantum communication, and CAD lower bounds randomized, adversary bound lower bounds quantum query complexity, and CAD lower bounds randomized query complexity, but not quantum. Okay. And the other measure we'll be considering is this AD1 that I mentioned. So here the constraint on AD is weakened. Instead of C and W pairs, which differ on arbitrarily many bits, we consider Z and W pairs that differ on only one bit, and on which the function value is different, and we require that the geometric mean of Q, Z, and QWI on this one bit is at least 1, and that's the constraint. So AD1 is an even smaller quantity than AD. Okay. So how do we actually show an adversary lower bound? So suppose you have some kind of algorithm or protocol for F. You use that to define a weight scheme. So approximately QCI for that algorithm or protocol is going to be a measure of how much the algorithm learns CI. So in query complexity, for example, QCI is the probability that the algorithm queries location I on input Z. It's going to be a scaled version of this, so that the constraint is exactly 1. Uh, okay. Now, so when QCI is defined this way, it's easy to see that summation over I of QCI is upper bounded by the number of queries made by the algorithm on that Z. So now all you need to do is that show that QCI is a valid weight scheme. So you need to show that it satisfies this min of QCI QWI constraint for CI, or this geometric mean of QCI QWI constraint for AD. If you can show this, then you're done, because the number of queries is lower bounded by this summation over I QCI of this weight scheme, and so in particular it is lower bounded by the summation over I QCI of the minimal weight scheme. Okay, so as I said, in query, the QCI is somewhat straightforward to define. It's just the probability that the algorithm queries I on Z, but it's less straightforward to do if you're considering communication instead, because the algorithm, the communication protocol can send arbitrary functions of the inputs X and Y. So it might be able to um, learn the compute the function without learning the value of Z even for important Z's. So that's why we'll use this notion of information complexity. Okay, so define information complexity. So you have inputs X and Y for a communication protocol, and you define some distribution pi on them, so some distribution mu on them. So the distribution mu is only for the sake of defining information complexity. The correctness of the protocol is not with respect to it. The correctness is always worst case. And the protocol also uses some shared randomness for in the randomized model, so which also has a distribution. So the distribution of the inputs and the distribution of the shared randomness that induces some distribution on the transcript of the protocol. So we'll call the transcript of the protocol on the protocol both pi. Now the information complexity of pi with respect to mu is defined as this quantity, the mutual information of x with pi condition on yr plus the mutual information between y and pi condition on xr, and both are with respect to mu. So this in particular is called the internal information complexity. There's also something called external information complexity, but we'll not talk about that. Okay, so information complexity obviously is upper bounded by the number of bits in pi, so the communication cost of pi for all distributions. And it also has this nice property called the chain rule that we'll use in order to define the information cost at a particular location I. So if you have x1 to xn inputs, the mutual information between xi and x and pi is a condition of yr is given by the sum of the mutual information between xi and pi conditioned on x less than I and yr. The quantum analog of information complexity is called QIC. So this is somewhat more difficult to define. It was done by Touchet in 2015. I will not go over the definition here, but I'll just mention that it's defined round by round instead of with respect to the whole transcript, because for quantum protocols, there is no notion of a transcript because information can get destroyed at every round. Okay. We'll use a couple of information complexity lower bounds for our proof. So consider protocols for the AND function and the OR function, the 2-bit AND function and the 2-bit OR function, and you consider the uniform distribution on 0 inputs of AND and the uniform distribution on 1 inputs of OR. So it was first shown by Bayosef, Jairam et al. That for any classical protocol for AND, the information complexity of pi with respect to this 0 input distribution mu0 is constant. And similarly, for any classical protocol for OR, the information complexity of with respect to mu1 is constant. The quantum version of this was given by Braverman, Garg et al. So that the quantum version is round dependent. They showed that for any R round quantum protocol computing or the information complexity with respect to mu0 is at least up to logarithmic factors 1 by r. And similarly for the AND function, the information complexity with respect to mu1 is at least 1 by r. And this is in fact optimal. The round dependence should be there because there is some protocol for which achieves this. As in, there is some protocol where the information complex for AND where the information complexity is 1 by r. So yeah, it can asymptotically go to 0, although the communication in that case is obviously not 0. The communication increases. Okay. So before going into our proof for the CR things, let's review this Word gadget that we're going to use. Okay. So the Word gadget in fact looks like this. It acts on AB, which are both in 0, 1, 2, 3, and it's equal to 1 if and only if A plus B is equal to 2 or 3 mod 4 and 0 otherwise. So the Word gadget has a number of nice properties that we'll use. So the first of these is called flippability. So suppose Alice and Bob receive some inputs A and B for Word. Oh, am I out of time? Okay.
Yeah, you have like 1 minute.
Oh, I'm sorry.
You can keep going. Just maybe speed up a little bit.
Okay. Yeah. So they have these properties called flippability, random self-reducibility, and non-triviality, which I've already mentioned, which means that Word contains both AND and OR. Okay. So what these properties mean is that if we have a protocol for F composed with Word, we can use this to give a protocol for Word. And I'll not go over the details here, but a protocol for Word should have information complexity constant because Word contains both AND and OR in the classical case, and this lets us do the CR lower bound. Okay. In the quantum case, we would hope that the same proof applies and gives us a CAD5R lower bound because the quantum information complexity lower bounds for AND and OR are 1 by R. But there are some problems with the chain rule we need to use. So we need to use a measure called HQIC instead of QIC for this. And HQIC is not a straightforward lower bound on communication cost. In fact, 1 by R of HQIC is a lower bound on QIC, which is a lower bound on communication cost. So this gives us an extra factor of 1 by R, and this lets us get a lower bound of CAD5R square. But because communication cost is always lower bounded by the number of rounds, because the number of rounds is uh, each round sends at least 1 qubit. This also lets us get a round independent result of CAD to the power 1/3. And this is not strictly better than the approximate degree lower bound that's already known for partial functions, but it might be so for relations. Okay. As for future directions, so obviously there are many ways that our results can be improved. If we could solve the chain rule problem that I didn't really mention, we could lift CAD5R to quantum communication complexity, and a stronger measure than the AD1 measure that I mentioned, not the full positive weights adversary bound for F, but something a little bit stronger than AD1. Another thing is our AD1 result comes with this factor of QICZ, uh, which we cannot unconditionally lower bound. Okay, and we sort of relate this measure to secure two-party communication. So secure two-party computation. So a question to explore might be whether techniques from cryptography might be helpful here, because secure two-party computation is known to be impossible in general. Another question is whether we can lift the full negative weights adversary bound. We are having much more difficulty lifting things to quantum communication than randomized. So maybe we could lift the negative weights adversary bound to randomized communication instead. This would still be stronger than all the currently known lower bounds for, not stronger, but at least incomparable with all the currently known lower bounds for RCC. Okay, thank you.
Okay, thanks. Okay, I guess maybe can still have quick questions if anyone wants to ask a question on Slack. So in the meantime, what is this SAD? Can you say what that is again?
Oh, okay. Let me go back to the slide where I define these things. So AD was defined with this summation over I of square root of QZI QWI, right? So SAD
yeah.
would be the measure you'd get if you basically if you Cauchy-Schwarz this, as in you take square root of summation over I of QCI.
Right. Okay. Okay. And can you say anything about what lets the proof go through with AD1 that breaks down when you have relations between things with larger Hamming distance?
So it's this is for AD. We don't really know how to make this work because we are using information as our Q weights here. And if you have something like this as in summation over I of square root of some information measure and square root of another information measure, that's kind of really difficult to work with for information. SRF is potentially doable because you have the product of two summation over I things, and you can do some kind of chain rule over the summation over I things individually. But the SR itself, we cannot exactly do now. We have some issues with the chain rule still. But yeah, that might be doable. But generalization to add yet, we don't know how to do.
I see. Even for randomized SAV, you can do?
For randomized, we can do CAD, which is stronger than SR.
Oh, SR, right. Okay. Oh, there is a question here. Is AV the positive weight adversary bound by Ambinus?
It's not the initial one introduced by Ambinus. Ambinus introduced an unweighted version of AD. It was subsequently, there were subsequently several weighted
Right.
versions introduced, and they were
Yeah.
all shown to be equivalent.
Yeah, I think it is what is today what is normally called the positive weight adversary method. Yeah. Yeah. Okay, I guess that's all our time. So yeah, let's stop there. Thanks, Rajita.
Thank you.
And thanks to all our speakers. And remember, if you have more questions, you can go to the roundtable now. There should be a button below the stage. You just click on that and go to the roundtable. So yeah, that's it for now. Thanks, everyone.